Hi, this is Jazz Obrecht, and welcome to my Talking Guitar podcast with the legendary fingerstyle guitarist Bert Jansch. In the United Kingdom during the early to mid 1960s, there was a great flowering of folk music and country blues played on acoustic guitar. This was partly due to the 1950s skiffle trend that found British use approximating American blues and folk music. It was also partly due to the visits and recording of American blues artists such as Big Bill Broonzy and Brownie McGhee. The three leading figures of Britain's acoustic guitar renaissance were Davy and Jansch and Renbourn, both born in England, and Bert Jansch, who hailed from Scotland. Jansch and Renbourn recorded some solo albums early on, and then they formed the internationally popular band Pentangle. Those who were on the scene at the time considered Jansch a genius on the guitar. Jimmy Page, for instance, said, and this is a direct quote, "As much as Hendrix has done on the electric, Bert's done on the acoustic." Jansch and Renbourn also put Bert at the head of their class. In fact, on the day before I interviewed Bert, I called Jansch, whom I'd been friends with for a long time, and asked him to share his perspective. Here's what Jansch had to say.
What sets him apart?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in my view, although I've been, involved in listening to the stuff that's come out of the British Isles in the way of singer-songwriters, guitar players, almost since the beginning of the scene, there's nobody I can think of, honestly, to touch Bert. He's in a class of his own completely. He's, in my view, the most outstanding songwriter and the most outstanding guitar player, barring Davy Graham, who happened to be around at the time when he was starting as well, What sets him apart, really, is his individuality. There's nobody quite like him. The stuff he does is intensely personal and just riveting when you listen to it. It's 100% convincing,
A couple of years before the interview with Bert, I had a conversation with Neil Young. As we were talking about Hendrix, Neil, unprompted, echoed what Jimmy Page had said by calling Bert the Jimi Hendrix of acoustic guitar. High praise indeed. In the call before the Jansch interview, Jansch and Renbourn had cautioned me that Bert was extremely introverted and not to read his tendency to be quiet and soft-spoken as a sign that he wasn't interested in speaking with me. My interview with Bert took place on February 1st, 1994. He just finished making the BBC film documentary called Acoustic Roots, which brought him the opportunity to play with his longtime hero, Brownie McGhee. I began by asking Bert his reaction to Jimmy Page and Neil Young's comment comparing him to Jimi Hendrix.
Bert, we did a cover story a year or two ago with Neil Young, and he's called you the Jimi Hendrix of the acoustic guitar. And
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You saw that?
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
I thought that was pretty interesting. Does it is it more of a help or a hindrance when rock stars make statements like that about you, or when Jimmy Page says, you're the greatest guitarist of the British Isles?
Well, I don't even think about it, to tell you the truth, because it's usually they're way out of my realm anyway. It doesn't really bother me that much, because in actual fact, I don't actually buy that many magazines, music magazines anyway.
I talked with Jansch and Renbourn yesterday, who asked me to send his best wishes to you.
Yeah, thanks.
And he said to be sure to ask you about Les Bridger.
Oh, the greatest guitarist in the world.
That's not what he said. Jansch said that in the early days, he never owned a guitar, and that he used to go to people's pads where a good guitar was. So,
yeah, that was the general idea.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think partly because the guitar I had when I first left school got stolen shortly after that, and
so I didn't actually bother with trying to possess one.
Was that the cello guitar?
No, that was the one directly after that. It was I think it was a Zenith actually. It was called the Josh White guitar at one time, and then later on in Britain it was called the Lonnie Donegan guitar. But it was the same guitar basically.
Back when you were first starting to play, did you ever watch any of the American bluesmen who came over to play the clubs?
Yeah. Well, I only got to know a few, or see a few. Brownie McGhee was one who came up to Scotland with Sonny Terry, and he played a few clubs, and I saw him then. And since then, various people, Jesse Fuller and quite a few others.
Were you old enough to have seen Broonzy?
No, I missed out. I mean, I was old enough, but I was in Scotland, and you didn't get it to Scotland, as far as I know, anyway.
And when Muddy came over acoustically, did you miss that as well?
No, I caught it on television, actually. They
Really?
did a few TV shows of them, yeah.
I would love to have seen that. Now, I understand you recently were film playing with McGhee.
Yeah, right, yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, that was great. It was a good afternoon. Most of it we've got on film or from the documentary, and they've got a CD out now with the soundtracks, which there's some really good tracks, particularly with Brownie.
Was that the film? Is that called Acoustic Roots?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Is that out on video?
Yeah, not on video, on CD. I mean, I think they're still haggling about videos.
Most American kids who are aware of Robert Johnson and Son House are not familiar with Brownie McGhee. Why would you suggest that it might be good for them to seek out his records?
Well, he was a great singer as well as a guitar player. I mean, as a duo, he was well known with Sonny Terry. But over here, it's a different world. I mean, we got to know people who became famous in this country, and yet were virtually unknown in their own country. It's quite a lot.
Do you hear a lot in common between Brownie McGhee and Blind Boy Fuller?
Well, I wouldn't have thought so. I would know the difference quite a lot. But I suppose there is something in common.
Well, they both played with Sonny too within a couple
year
period.
I know the background.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is, but I mean, Brown McGhee certainly talks about him a lot.
Yeah, he sure does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if he was his idol or whatever.
Yeah.
He might have been, yeah.
Is Brownie still living over in Oakland, California?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a hard guy to get to know sometimes.
Mm.
When you
I don't blame him. It's a wicked old world out there.
If you could have somehow transcended time to see any musicians who came before your time, who would be the first ones you would have liked to have witnessed playing?
Well, Big Bill, I think. For me, anyway, Big Bill.
What did you like about his playing?
I suppose the simplicity of it, actually. I mean, because he didn't really try to impress you all that much, He was a bit more polished, than most of the other players. Although it could be quite complex, it had that apparent some simplicity about it.
Yeah, it seemed like he was a lot more complex early in his career than he was later on.
I think he was like the one who bordered more on being a star, like a cabaret star or anything, something like that, particularly in Europe,
Muddy, Waters claimed that Big Bill was the nicest person he ever met in his life. And Bill had a reputation for being very generous to other musicians.
Well, that's what Brownie said about, he said that in the documentary about Big Bill, who apparently gave Brownie his first chance to actually come over here. It was supposed to be a tour with Big Bill, but Big Bill couldn't make it or something.
When you were young, did you listen to blues records on 78s?
No, the first blues it was a Big Bill. It was a little EP that came out over here, and I must have played it to death, that thing. I think most of it then it was LPs after that. You know, the 78s. I was a bit too young then.
Were you aware of when you were first starting to play? Who were the main guitarists that you were aware of? I know Davy Graham was just a little bit before you, or at the same time.
Yeah, it was Davy. Davy was the main one. My immediate surrounding musicians around me at the time were Archie Fisher from Scotland and Hamish Imlach and Josh McRae. And they in turn got their influences mainly through Hamish, I think it was, who actually went out of his way to collect albums, particularly from the States, you know.
Who could you spell Hamish's name for me?
Imlach, IMACH.
How's his first name spelled?
Hamish, HAMISH.
And who is he?
He's a Scots folk singer. He's a more of a comedian come folk singer.
Ah.
Yeah.
And
in the Billy, what's his name? Yeah.
Is that where you became aware of the more old-timey songs?
No, well, partly. I think I got that mainly from Clive Palmer, who he was much more into that, away from the immediate blues stuff, American blues. He was much more into the actual folk songs, American folk songs, and used to sing quite a lot of them up in Scotland.
Now, Archie Fisher came from a traditional singing family, didn't he?
Yeah. I was almost part of that family at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was 6 sisters and a mum and Archie.
Oh, was he outnumbered?
Yeah, 7 to 1 he was. And every one of them sang. And I think Cindy played the banjo as well.
Were any of the members of your family musical?
Well, to my knowledge, not really. I had a grandfather who was he played a banjo in the New Christie Minstrels. That's my only claim to fame.
Which Christie Minstrels? The ones from the 20th century?
Well, there'd be the one over here. It's a British outfit over here. I don't know much about them. I know they used to black up and all that kind of stuff, you know, which should be banned and made illegal over here, you know.
They wore blackface?
Yeah.
Oh, so that was the original Christie Minstrels. What was his name?
I don't know, actually. Honestly, I have no idea. It's funny, but I don't. You know.
Did you
I know it's my grandfather on my mother's side.
Yeah. Your mother's father.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be it. Yeah.
What did you have much exchange with Davy Graham? I know you took lessons with his sister for a while.
Well, yeah. I mean, I knew Davy quite well. I mean, he used to visit Scotland a lot in the early days. I'd be about 16 when I first met him. And you just got to know each other. I mean, it's when I came down to London, I shared a flat for a while with Nick, his brother, Davy's brother. And it was Nick who got me interested in listening to jazz, Charlie Mingus and stuff like that.
What kind of shape's Davy in now?
He's fine. He's doing a residency at the Forge in London. Forge, a little club in Denmark Street. He does it most Friday nights. You'll find him in there. And we're about to go and start a tour. Well, it's a handful of gigs, I suppose, with myself and Davy, and I think John's involved, and a few other people.
What was Renborn's playing like when you first got to know him?
Well, much the same. He's a very flighty player, you know.
Flighty?
Flighty. Very light. Mm-hmm. You know, I've always thought that of his music. Not much bottom end there, you know what I mean?
Not much what?
Bottom end.
You know? Oh, bottom end, yeah.
Yeah.
Where did you learn Blackwater Side?
I learned that from Anne Briggs.
Oh, she's a great singer.
Yeah.
Did she do an a cappella version?
Yeah. I mean, that's how I learned it. I mean, we wrote a couple of songs together and used to, you know, appear in clubs occasionally.
Did you record with her?
No, we never did actually. No, which is more a pity.
Where did Anne find her traditional songs? Do you know?
Well, she was part of a revival by Ewan McCall called what was it, 64? Something 64. It was in the 64 revival, folk revival by Ewan McCall. And she, in herself, that's where she was called a revivalist singer. And she used to get most of her material from Bert Lloyd, who wrote many a tune. Trying to think of one now. The Bonnie Black Hair is one of his tunes, I think.
Did you ever get songs from old sheet music, or was most of your stuff come from learning from listening to other contemporaries of yourself?
Well, in Scotland, I knew quite a few traditional singers personally. Jeannie Robson and Jimmy Macbeth, they were favourites. Joe Heaney I knew quite well, an Irish singer. And also, I knew most of the Dubliners as well. Luke Kelly, who was a great singer. There's quite a few, I suppose. But most of if you really were desperate, if you'd heard a song and you didn't have the words or anything, you'd go to Cecil Sharp House in London and try and go through their libraries. You know.
What's the name of the house?
Cecil Sharp House.
Cecil Shop?
Sharp.
Oh, CECIL.
Cecil Sharp was a collector, folk collector.
Oh, I see. At what point in your learning did you learn notation?
Well, really, I suppose I was brought up with it because I had music piano lessons when I was 7 and 8. Although I didn't keep it up though. But it all stems from that, really, basically.
Why did you gravitate towards the guitar instead of piano as you got older?
I think it's Lonnie Donegan's fault. He's the fault for quite a few, actually. Because when we were doing research for the Acoustic Roots program, I actually personally interviewed quite a few people, including people like Roy Harper and all that. I mean, some people never actually got into the documentary because it was money. We just didn't have enough money to, and also time. So the length of the program and things like that, you know.
Yeah.
But most of them actually, one of the first things they said was, as a child of hearing Lonnie Donegan playing his guitar, and that sparked it all off. And, skiffle. The skiffle movement was started again by the likes of Hugh McCall. There's quite a few skiffle bands started around that period.
Is it true you were a beatnik for a while?
Yeah, well, I did. My early days, they would call me a bohemian, then it progressed to beatnik, and then I suppose I still am, I suppose.
What was the beatnik outfit in those days?
Well, a long jersey, sandals, pair of jeans, and a duffel coat.
A duffel coat?
Yeah.
What's that?
So, a coat with toggle buttons and a hood.
Did you have the beret?
No. Didn't go that far. I had long hair, and I used to wear beads and stuff.
Did you get in trouble from your neighbors or your family for having long hair or that look?
Well, no. I left home when I was 15, 16, so I've been traveling ever since. So, it's basically you don't take any notice of what people think,
right,
or how you look.
At what point did you become interested in banjo music?
Well, that is Daryl Adams is the inspiration there. I suppose. When I first came to London, I got to know Donovan and Daryl Adams. They were on the scene down here at the time. Daryl used to, absolutely amaze me with the stuff he was doing on the banjo. And he still does, actually. It's the main influence there.
Where did your knowledge of open tunings begin?
On the guitar?
Yeah, on the guitar.
Well, I only know basically one. That's Dadgad, and Davy invented that. That's all I can tell you, really. Where I either learned it from Davy or somebody like Mark McCarthy in the early days.
So you don't play an open D or open G?
No.
Have you ever played slide?
No. Generally, I play just normal guitar. Most of the pieces are in normal. Very rarely would go into a tuning.
Dadgad. What are some of the better-known songs you've done in Dadgad?
A Woman Like You is one. Mm-hmm. First time ever. There's quite a few pieces, actually, but if I collectively get them all together.
Is Blackwater side?
No, that's just with the bass down to D. What
about Jack Orion, standard?
I think that would be with the bass down to D as well, actually. Mm-hmm. I've done so many versions of that. Things like we'd have a Pentangle version, and then I would have a version.
Are there any songs from the Pentangle period that people still want to hear you play?
Oh, yeah. We still have to play occasionally Light Flight, and we do. We pick our favourites, that's all. We do Blackwater, Bruton Town. That's it. Bruton Town. There's a few others, but I can't remember them offhand.
When was your favorite period in Pentangle? Or do you have a favorite record?
Of the band?
Yeah.
Not really. I always tend to think that they could have been or should have been 100 times better than they actually are. Therefore, I don't really tend to listen. In fact, I don't really listen to my own albums at all, really. I think it's off-putting for future stuff I may do,
In what respect?
Well, stuff I'm working on at the moment. I don't like it to be too influenced by what I've done before.
Was a lot of them, we tend to think of our favorite albums from the past. For instance, the Jack Ryan album you did, people tend to think of those arrangements as set in stone, or your version of Angie as being the penultimate version, and that's the way you should play it.
But in actual fact, no. That's how it was at the time. At the time of playing, because they were done live. I mean, some of them have developed out of all recognition since then. It's not a. I mean, there's no way I'd ever. I mean, Angie's. People learnt to play Angie with all the mistakes in it from the album.
Yeah.
If they really want to play Angie, they should listen to Davy's, the original.
Although that record's extremely hard to find.
Yeah.
Over here, at least.
Yeah.
Most people have got it from you or from a version by Paul Simon.
Yeah.
And his version came from yours, I assume.
Well, so I haven't heard it, to tell you honestly.
You haven't heard Paul's version?
No.
What has experience taught you about getting a good acoustic guitar sound on record?
That's a hard one, really. Because it's the engineer, basically. Because I never did actually ask Bill Leader, who did the early stuff, for me, what he was actually using at the time. And I mean, apart from, I know the machine was a Revox, but the actual mics and that he was using, I've no idea.
What kind of environment was it recorded in?
Well, those were recorded just at home. You would bring the mixer in the kitchen and black out all the windows where we went.
No kidding. And
no, that's how it was done. Yeah.
You'd sit in your living room, or?
Well, the album Bert and John was done in the hallway, and we had to invite the neighbours upstairs down to give them a drink and that to keep it quiet.
Did you have to stop takes if a car went by or something?
Yeah. Well, sometimes you just didn't bother; you just kept going. And I suppose you listen hard, but the quality of the recording, would mask all that out.
Have you heard your old music on compact disc?
Well, that's another thing. I don't really like to listen to it all that well, because it's. I don't think it stands up. What I have heard.
Of your music?
Yeah, of anything from that period, not just myself. I mean, it's nowhere near as good as on the old LP. Even with all the scratches and stuff. It's. I mean, I don't know. There seems to be I think there's bottom end in there that you just don't get on a CD.
Do you think there's a warmth missing?
Yeah, well, I think it's distortion, actually. I mean, this modern day CD doesn't have distortion, whereas the old vinyl did,
Yeah. Huh. Now, we heard a report a few years ago that you were troubled with arthritis in your right hand. Is that true?
No, I went through a period when I was young. I was about 19, where I ended up in hospital with arthritis, but I've never had it since then.
That's funny. I had the same experience.
I've never had it since then. So, I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I've had various different things wrong with me since then, but it's definitely not that one.
So you never had problems with your hands?
Only then. Only when I was about 19, 20.
What, do you think that could have been caused by playing too much?
No, from what I know, there was a venereal disease.
Oh.
which manifests itself in arthritis.
The same thing happened to Blind Boy Fuller.
Yep. I mean, yeah. I mean, I have had a thing where the blood. I mean, that's circulation problems. You know, in the wintertime, if it gets very cold, the blood doesn't get to the tip of my fingers. You know, you have to rush to hot water, stick them under hot water to bring. But that's gone. That was a few years back. That doesn't happen anymore.
If people heard what you played when you're by yourself, when no one around, would they be surprised, or is it close to the music that you record?
Well, that's a hard one. I've never been asked that one before. It's hard for me to say because I mean, if they come to see me on a solo gig, that's probably the closest they will get to me being in the front room.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with a band, it's you very rarely just play. You know, I mean, you have to stick to a routine and whatever the band wants to play. And that.
When you're on stage, will you take chances and improvise things you've never tried before? Or do you think that's best left to when you're doing it by yourself?
No, I'm on stage. I'm continually actually, because it's the only way I can get numbers off the ground is actually to launch into them without actually knowing how they're going to come out. You know, and I do it quite regularly. You know. And at the moment, I've got like 2 or 3 songs which have developed on the stage over the last year, which I haven't put on album yet. So, but I mean, in a way, that's good, you know, because they are developing, which is great, you know.
Do you ever use the guitar to play yourself in and out of moods?
Well, I used to, yeah. I suppose I still do. I mean, nowadays, if I'm at home, I'm either doing something musically, so I don't really have time for moods. But in the old days, if I was angry or anything, I'd take it out on the guitar. Quite, you know. Oh yeah, and to play really. When you're angry, you can really play blues. You really can play them, really good.
Oh yeah. When do you think you play your best?
I don't know. I suppose, yeah. Well, it's hard if you're actually beginning a tour, and about the 3rd gig in is probably a great one. And but after like the 3rd week of the tour, you actually deteriorate to you get worse and worse. I don't know if it's just sheer tiredness or you would think you'd be like playing like a dream by the 3rd or 4th week. But I mean, in actual fact, I don't think you do. I think unless you, which I keep wanting the band to do, is completely change the program, completely change it, so that you're actually playing something new, something fresh anyway, not new but fresh.
When you're playing gigs around the British Isles, what kind of a band do you tend to travel with? What instrumentation?
Well, if I was on my own, I'm totally on my own. There's no other musician involved. But I often do gigs with Peter Kirtley, the 2 of us, as a duo. So it's just 2 guitars, 2 voices.
Would you spell his last name?
Kirtley, Kirtley. And this last year, I did 2 weeks with myself and Jackie McGhee.
Great singer.
So I also did quite an extensive tour on my own, but I had a support from Dave Hughes, who was very good, but we didn't play together.
Have you ever owned an electric guitar?
At one time, I had one made for me by John Bailey. That was in the early days, just prior to the Pentangle. But other than that, the excursion into it, no.
What's the best acoustic guitar or guitars that you've had?
Well, I think the best ones I had were I had a couple of Armstrongs, Rob Armstrongs, who's a maker from Coventry. But the guitars that really were good, I've long since gone. About 5-6 years ago, been sold and whatever. I mean, I do have one now of his, but it wasn't the best one, you know.
I've noticed on some of your songs, there's this Shaughnessy record out. It's like the best of Bert Jansch. On some of this stuff, with your right hand, you have this amazing knack for making your music sound like it's 3 guitars playing at once, or you can make an old string sound like a new string sound like an old string. Do you have a really active right hand?
Well, I've had guitar players say to me that that's what they would like, is my right hand, not the left one. You know, 'cause the left one actually doesn't really do very much. It's just I suppose I'm a very rhythmic player. If I don't feel the rhythm, then I can't really play. I mean, you know, if a blues gets too slow to the point where you can't tell where the beat is, then I'm lost, you know.
Right.
But it's all right hand stuff. You know.
Do you do anything special to help keep your guitar in tune?
Oh, it never is in tune. I've continually problems with the B string.
The B?
The B string, yeah. I mean, that's where most guitars, if they're going to be out of tune, is on the B string. Yeah.
Have you tried, stringing it up one day and not playing it, and then playing it the next day, so the strings stretch overnight?
Well, when you first put them on?
Yeah, I learned that from a flat picker named Dan Crary. If you're changing your strings and you put new strings on, just tune them up to pitch one time, put them in the case, and wait 24 hours, and then pull it out and tune them up. And I've discovered that when you do that, they stay fresh longer, and they stay in tune a heck of a lot better.
Yeah. Well, I'll try that one day.
It's a great. I mean, I never thought it would make that big a difference, but I was astonished by how well it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you move your right hand down towards the bridge and then up by the neck a lot as you're playing?
No, not that much. I sometimes go the other way towards the bridge to get a harder, sharper sound.
Do you still play with a thumb pick?
Yeah.
What's the advantage there?
I don't think it's an advantage at all, actually. I think it's more like a disadvantage. I mean, and that all stems from Big Bill Broonzy. Having seen him on the Scottish TV, there was a program up here called what was it called? It was called John Grierson, the Professor John Grierson. It was a program called This Wonderful World, and it was the only time I'd ever seen Big Bill Broonzy was on this program, and he showed it quite a bit because people used to phone into the TV company to ask for it to be shown again. From when he was in Paris. He was playing in a Paris nightclub. And he wore a thumb pick, you see, so I thought, well, I've got to wear a thumb pick. And I've been wearing one ever since.
Do you ever wear finger picks as well?
No.
I understand from John that you have a really light touch with your right hand, but you're very aggressive as well.
Yeah, well, I suppose I am I'm a very rhythmic player. Very, can get aggressive at times.
Yeah. Where did your string snapping come from?
Well, that was just sheer out of aggressiveness. I mean, you've got to remember in those early days, you used to play clubs quite a lot, and if you're playing and you didn't have a microphone or anything, you were just trying to be heard,
Yeah.
And so you would pull the strings, so that they slap back onto the fingerboard,
Yeah. That goes back to, I think of that as coming like from Charlie Patton and Son House, and that's a staple of the Delta blues period.
Well, I didn't learn it from them.
Do you play with your fingernails on your right hand as well?
Yeah, it's flesh and then fingernail.
So you keep them fairly short?
Yeah. I don't play with just a nail. No.
Do you ever tear your fingernails up?
Oh, yeah. That's a big problem.
Yeah.
I found that since superglue arrived, everything's all right now. Because you can instantly patch your nail up quite quickly.
What guitar do you tour with these days?
Well, at the moment, I'm touring with a Yamaha and a Fender acoustic.
Is this a new Fender acoustic?
Yeah, it's what's the model? Montara.
Do these guitars have built-in pickups or something?
Yeah. Well, the Yamaha, I had it put in years ago, but the Montara is built in.
What kind of pickups tend to work the best for you?
Well, I suppose they're all Piazza pickups. I'm not very quite sure actually. The Yamaha one, that's the actual saddle is a pickup. I mean, that system I think is very good. But whatever it is, it's really down to the preamp.
Yeah.
That's what makes the good pickup on. Between the good and the bad is how good the preamp is.
You talked about making mistakes in your playing sometimes, and it sounds like you're very self-critical. When you make a mistake on stage, do you ever find it's good to repeat it so it seems like it's part of the song?
Well,
I
wouldn't say that the mistake was. If the mistake was that awful, you wouldn't want to repeat it. But I mean, sometimes an arrangement or whatever, you say, oh, that sounds nice, and so therefore you remember it. But I mean, I wouldn't really call that a mistake. More like improvising, we'll call it.
What's your best environment for writing songs?
That's a hard one. I mean, because I think late at night, or early morning. I mean, those periods. I mean, they're the quietest, and also that took me a long while. I had to stop drinking to find that out. If you get up early in the morning, it's got a completely different atmosphere to any other time of the day. And whereas late at night is that sleepy, the other end of it is like sleepy feeling,
Do songs ever come to you away from the guitar, like you'll wake up with a melody or hear it when you're driving in your auto or something?
Well, I don't drive a car, but I think it's more if I know the tune, already in my head, you know, then I can write the words away from the guitar. But I mean, I can't think tunes. Well, I can think them once they're there, but or think bits of them once they're there.
Do you ever write down incompleted songs and then maybe finish them a year later? Or
oh yes, I've got thousands of them.
really?
Yeah, that's what's good about this computer bit, you see, because you can actually. I mean, if you get to the machine fast enough, there's no way of losing the initial idea, you know.
Can you play into the machine and it writes out the music?
Yeah, it will write it out eventually. I mean, what I'm going to send you is been done that way.
That's great.
But I mean, you have to work on it afterwards. You have to organize it afterwards.
Do you have favorites of the songs you've written?
Not really. More favorites of periods of time rather than individual songs.
If a kid was to buy his first Bert Jansch album, which one might you suggest he start with? If you can even answer that question.
Well, there's a sampler which I think which I put the tracks together. It's the one that has me sitting underneath a windmill. I don't know what the actual album was called. But,
do you know the label it came out on?
It's the Transatlantic. Or one of Transatlantic's labels.
Wouldn't be Don't Bother Me, Birthday Blues, Nicole, it would have tracks from those records?
Yeah, well, I think it's me picking up tracks from each previous album. So it's quite a nice spread, that one.
What years would it cover?
Well, the years you just mentioned, right up to Nicola and Nicola, as we say over here.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Do you still use extra light strings?
Yeah. I've tried to get away from them, but once you're stuck with them, I mean, when you're on the road and you play a lot, you just got to, it's got to be comfortable. You know.
Do you ever like put the guitar down for a few weeks just to freshen yourself?
No, I've never done that. I've never put it down.
Do you play every day?
Well, I did once, directly after the Pentangle split up. I didn't play for 2 years. Yeah.
Wow. Was there a reason for that?
Well, I'm not quite sure, but we'd just bought a farm at the time. I was rather busy.
What are your plans for the near future, musically speaking?
Well, near future, I think I'm probably going to sign with Demon Records.
Demon?
Demon, D-E-M-O-N.
Satanic?
Yeah. Yeah, that's them.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that have reissued all the back catalogue in this country.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll probably sign with them for the next, 3 albums I think they want.
Have you got the material?
Yeah. But aside from that, the band is about to do quite a major tour over here in March.
Which band is that?
The Pentangle.
Oh, that's great. Is it going to be all the original members?
Oh, no. It's myself and Jackie are the only original members.
No Renborn?
No.
What happened to Thompson?
He's got his own band now. He's got a band called Whatever, which is a great band, actually. It's a full jazz band, but doing folk stuff as well, That's what Danny does at the moment.
Does the guitar mean as much to you now as it did when you were 15?
Oh, I think so, yeah. I should think more so at the moment. As the more I get older, the more it becomes the central thing, you know.
Well, Bert, this is wonderful. I really thank you for giving us this interview.
Great.
After our interview, Bert went on to appear on more than 30 new albums and compilations. He also participated in several concert and documentary videos. This extraordinary singer-songwriter passed away on October 5th, 2011, at the age of 67. Before signing off, I want to thank my podcast producer, Nick Hunt, the staff of the Southern Folklife Collection at the University of North Carolina, and you, my subscribers, for listening in. Thank you.